Welcome to another edition of the Dogger Pass podcast. This for UFC Vegas 63. I'm Paul Shaughnessy, joined online by Cody Saftic, coming off the heels of UFC 280. This card, I mean, there's fights for us to bet on, but like it's not entirely like there's nothing really like nothing anticipatory, nothing that you're looking at and you're like, man, I can't be outside of the main event. Main event should be pretty awesome, but like you kind of look top to bottom and you're like, this is just a mishmash of guys who maybe they're trying to release before the end of the year, and I don't know. It's a card. It's something for us to bet on. This episode of the Dogger Pass podcast and all episodes of the Dogger Pass podcast are brought to you by Prize Picks. Use promo code DOP when making a new account to get a match up to $100 on that first deposit. I owe you something, Cody. And it's because Krylov showed up and it was all of a sudden a D1 wrestler. Like, took down, 6 takedowns? 3 times as many takedowns as Daniel Cormier got against Volkan Oezdemir. Hell of a performance by him. Good for him.
Yeah, not gonna lie, man.
We're going celiac friendly here, so it's just rum and DP.
The diet DP?
Yeah. While I pour this, why don't you say hello to the crowd and all that good stuff?
Yeah, Nikita Krylov, not gonna lie, like in the first round, I'm like, man, he's already gassing out. But luckily, they both kind of gassed out, and Krylov's gas tank, it kind of held together. Like, he was able to consistently go for those takedowns. I felt like they got easier as time went on, and solid enough performance. So yeah, we know that the guy's got blitzing striking attack, but the fact that he can like rely on a bit of a grinding pace and go 15 minutes if need be, solid victory for him. We were looking so hot last week. We hit like 8 in a row to start the card. We hit our Bilal Muhammad underdog pick and then just ended catastrophically. But therein lies the problem about betting. Like, even if TJ had 2 arms, probably should have taken Sterling, I guess. But I didn't even know he was compromised. So going in, you're always assuming they're at their best, but you don't know what you're getting yourself into. The guy could show up with 1 arm, hasn't told anybody about it. And as a result, and not so good. So, I mean, yeah, we break down the best we can. But even like, I don't know if you saw that Anderson Silva interview about Jake Paul just like yesterday or today. And he's like, oh, I got knocked out twice in sparring leading up to this camp. It's like, what? You got knocked out twice in sparring leading up to this camp? Like, if that's true, like, holy shit, man. Like, why would you bet this guy? If it's not true and it's all mental warfare, who knows? But like, we can only assume they're at their best. Yeah. Tough breaks, man, because we was rolling. And then I was like, I lost. I was like, you know what? It's not the end of the world. Peter Yan just got to go out, beat Sean O'Malley. And it was a plus 105 on the top ticket. So we would have made all the money back, maybe like the slightest smidge of a profit. And just not meant to be, dude. Just not meant to be. So them's the game. I got a bunch of messages from people who are like, I'm done betting. The judges are corrupt. The sport's corrupt. Don't want to bet it again. Like, I get it. If that's your prerogative and you feel salty about it, it is what it is. But fortunately, we don't have the luxury to do that. It's a bad bounce. Hopefully we get one in our favor coming up.
Yeah. I generally like treaded water. If Charles had won, then I'm up a good amount of money. It would have been a decent night. He doesn't win. And yeah, it was like a lateral move. Didn't really make any money, but didn't get hosed or anything like that. But yeah, it's that's just the game, man. You just gotta keep grinding. There's cards every single week, and there's opportunity to make money literally every single week. Back in the day, we would have like 20 cards over the course of an entire year. Now there's like 45. And then you have Contender Series. It's like there's, 55, 60 UFC events, and there's Bellator, and yeah. It's never been a better time to be betting on MMA. The lines are getting a little bit sharper, but there's way more opportunity. I'm just delaying the inevitable. Pitter patter, let's get at her. The tongue on this thing is not, I need a new shoey boot. Let's break down the action. We got Arnold Allen taking on Calvin Kattar. Straight pick 'em, Cody. Take it away.
Yeah, honestly, it's a good fight. Good main event, solid competitive. Arnold Allen, on one hand, I think he's like the division's dark horse, flies under the radar, doesn't have like those big, sexy wins per se. But I mean, he's on a hell of a roll here, undefeated in the UFC, getting continuously better. And then they're starting to up his level of competition and he's showing up. Dan Hooker's last time out was meant to be a real test. And of course, he knocks him out in the first round. I'm going to make an argument about why that's not as impressive as it looks. But all the same, I feel like Arnold Allen is, again, someone who doesn't get the respect. Maybe I'm not even going to give him his full respect in this breakdown. But solid everywhere. Can wrestle, has decent cardio, has good striking. The reason why I can't really get behind him is it looked to me just like he's a low output guy, real low output guy. When you look at the course of his career in the UFC, he's had a lot of these close decision type fights, but super low output fights. Against Yauts and Meta, goes 15 full minutes, he lands 31. Against Makwan Americani, 15 full minutes, he lands 32. Against Mads Burnell, deep into the third, he lands 29. He lost the first 2 rounds against Mads Burnell, caught him in a guillotine choke in the third round. Bad performance, bad performance. Already low output, not a good performance, okay? All of them. Jordan Rinaldi is next time out. Drops him, beats him over 15 minutes, 37 significant strikes landed. The Gilbert Melendez fight's an outlier because he just leg kicked him the entire time, which is why he's got huge striking numbers. And Gilbert was done. Gilbert, I'm pretty sure, retired right after that. And even to this day, if you try to book Gilbert for a fight, he'll tell you, as long as the guy promises not to kick me in the leg. It's like an ongoing joke, right? But that was kind of one of these fights that looks good on paper because you beat an aged legend, a former champion, a former top guy. But in reality, it was just one of those setups. He is that low output guy. Him versus Nick Lentz, thriller of a fight. Closer than it need be against a gatekeeper like Nick Lentz. And again, a career high 63 is not a career high, the Melendez fight was, but outside of that, 63 significant strikes landed is too low. Let's zone in these last two. The Sodiq Yusuff fight, he cleanly gets outworked the entire fight. What wins him the fight, and as he's getting outworked in the first round and getting outstruck, he lands a clean shot, wobbles Sodiq Yusuff, that steals him the round. In the second round, he gets outworked by Sodiq Yusuff the entire round, and boom, it's like a partial head kick gets blocked. Sodiq does the stanky leg. He rushes on him. It wins in the second round. And then on all 3 scorecards, he lands 2 significant strikes in the third and loses it on all 3 scorecards, but wins that fight. In the fight, he got outstruck 47-21. It's just another long list of he's a super low volume guy. Yes, he rocked Sodiq Yusuff. He got away with it. Yeah, he's caught Mads Burnell in the third round. He got away with it. Those guys are lower level guys. So the win streak's nice in its own way, but I think you can point some serious holes in it. And then for Dan Hooker, that's a quality victory, right? Dan Hooker's a guy that's fought the best of the best and been there, done that. But Hooker's not really what he used to be. He's gotten thrashed. I think the Michael Chandler fight was the first time Edson Barbosa stopped him due to strikes to the body, which he took a mauling in that fight. And then Chandler knocked him out clean to the head. First time he'd been knocked out to the head. And then Islam Makhachev blows right through him. And then Arnold Allen blows right through him. Maybe that's a trending thing towards Dan Hooker. So it's not to discredit Arnold Allen whatsoever. I think he's a fine talent, but he's going to need to bring way more to the table. And Calvin Kattar is a guy that's landed over 100 significant strikes in his last 4 straight fights. The guy's a machine. We know he can go 5. We know he's got a tough cast iron chin in case he does have to, defend against a couple shots here and there from Allen. But I really do think that the technical boxing is better. The work rate's a lot better. The experience at that level is better. And I feel like that's going to prevail. It's going to be a close fight, probably decision. Could be a split decision. Could be a very close competitive decision. But this is an even money fight. So it's not like it's big favorite status for any one side, right? It's a pick 'em. I got to go with Kattar. I think that the strike accumulation is going to wear off down the end. And again, Arnold Allen, good wins, but when you look at them, he's not competing at the same level as Calvin Kattar, and he's not showing the same results. So if this is his coming out party, so be it. But until then, I got to go with Boston's own Calvin Kattar.
Yeah, I'm on the same page with you. It really comes down to volume for me. I found interesting on Prize Picks, there's 0.5 takedowns for Arnold Allen. I expect him to try to mix that in a little bit in this fight, kind of like what he did against Sodiq Yusuff, where on the feet was relatively competitive, and he was able to, mix them in. I don't think he's a great wrestler. He does a lot of standing cage control, muscles people up to the cage, and then is able to peel them down from there. I could see getting 1 takedown over the course of 5 rounds seems like a half decent outcome for Arnold Allen, something that he may, especially if he's down, say, the first couple of rounds against Calvin Kattar, he's probably going to try to wrestle a little bit. It doesn't take much to get one takedown, so I don't mind that for Arnold Allen in the main event on Prize Picks. But yeah, I'm total agreement that I think it really comes down to like, who's throwing more over the course of 5 rounds. And we've seen Kattar do it over the course, like in 5-round fights. Like obviously Holloway, landed him like 3-1, but he was able to stay in there and still land like 140 significant strikes of his own during that time. But yeah, the thing for him is that Kattar just seems like obscenely durable. So I'd be pretty surprised for Allen to just like, knock him out in the first 2 rounds. 5-round experience is all on Kattar's side. It's a pick 'em. It's a close fight. I'll probably end up with money on Calvin Kattar with you on Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening, whatever. Yeah, I think we did all we really had to do on that one. We got Max Griffin taking on Tim the Dirty Bird Means, -180 Griffin, plus 155 for Tim Means. Tim Means 38 years old at this point, Cody. It ain't looking pretty. The thing I struggle with in this matchup, though, is like if these two guys are just like standing and trading, like it feels like it's a very winnable fight for Means. I don't love Means' cardio. It's never really been like super impressive in lots of fights, like down the stretch. Round 3, he usually tends to slow down considerably. Max Griffin, yeah, I mean, you go through his wrestling isn't exactly elite. He was able to take down Alex Morono 4 times in their matchup. That was a fight that I watched back. Maybe he's able to mix them in a little bit. I'm leaning towards Tim Means here, just on the fact that if it's like a 15-minute stand-up fight between the two of them, I would expect this to be pretty close. Max Griffin is super durable. Means may get out to a little bit of a hot start, but I expect him to kind of trail off as we get a little bit deeper down into the later rounds. I'm leaning as a dogger pass, but I don't think it's going to get my money. I'll pick Tim Means for the purposes of this show, but trust me, I don't love it, and I'm not going to bet it. But laying -180 on Max Griffin, I just don't really see how I get there. What about you?
Yeah, see, the tempting is the plus money on Tim Means because it's going to be a striking battle. He's going to have some moments and some spots. Unfortunately, at 38 years old and even prior to 38 years old, the Dirty Bird's got some durability issues, and I feel like that's kind of been a nagging point. Now, mind you, 38 years old, not completely over the hill. He's won 3 of his last 4 fights. He was on a 3-fight winning streak prior to his last one, which is a competitive enough loss to Kevin Holland. So Kevin Holland's actually not bad within the division. How is that a knock against Tim Means? But again, to me, it's that the guy never really gets blown out of the water in the first round. He's always competitive in that first. It's whether you can take him down the stretch. Against Holland, he started off well. Unfortunately, wasn't able to keep it going. In the fights prior, outside of the Mike Perry fight, where he just kind of kicked his ass from long range, he's been mixing his wrestling in almost all of these spots. I feel like Tim Means started out as an incredibly good striker, would only rely on his wrestling when he didn't want to get hit. And now at 38, now with a couple KO losses, now with questionable cardio and durability, he's been utilizing that wrestling way more. When I look at his opponent here, Max Griffin, Griffin takedown defense, okay, but I mean, in his last fight against Neil Magny went 1 for 9 on takedowns on him, right? He looked good there. He looked big and he looked solid. And there's another thing about Tim Means. Tim Means has gotten away with his striking being effective because the guy's 6 feet tall, right? He's very tall and rangy for the weight class, 75-inch reach. But against Max Griffin, 5'11", 76-inch reach, I think Griffin's just got a really good educated jab, should be able to beat Means to the jab. Mean loves using those elbows, but those are close quarter weapons, right? I don't know that he's going to get by the jab. Even same thing with his low kick game. He's just going to get countered effectively over and over until he slowly breaks down or gets clipped with something, I would hope. But, Max Griffin's really no spring chicken himself, 36 years old. He's battled a bunch of injuries. He hardly ever fights. And when you look at the guys he's been fighting as of late, outside of Neil Magny, it's like, Song Kanan, okay, all right. Ramiz Brahimaj, okay, I don't know. Carlos Condit, yeah, maybe it's not the most elite level guys, but you see solid improvements in him within all those fights. Even that last fight with Neil Magny, argument that he won, I didn't think he won, but of course I bet the other way on that one. But but a very close competitive fight where he outstrikes Neil Magny, stuffs all the takedowns, and gives a very good account of himself. Against Tim Means, I think if he goes does the same thing, stuffs the few takedowns that Means is going to throw out there, use the jab, stay in that range, and then eventually land that big shot, he'll turn the tables, at least win 2 of the rounds. I got to stay with Max Griffin, although I don't fault you for maybe taking that live underdog shot on Tim Means.
Oh, I'm not taking the shot on Tim Means. 38 years. Like, it isn't very pretty at this point. There's not many spots on this card that I absolutely love from a betting perspective. So rather than chasing some dogs that I don't really trust, I think it's going to be a pretty light week, to be perfectly honest.
Next, just hit a pass on this one. It'll be a fun fight to watch. It enjoyable from an entertainment standpoint, but
yeah,
from a betting standpoint, greasy.
Yeah, I don't really want to put my hard-earned dollars behind Tim Means at 38 years old, kind of. When he has to lean on his wrestling because he's not quite as sharp, not quite as fast as he used to be on the feet. That's not a spot I really want to get invested in too much. And then even the over-under in that fight, it's minus 160 to the over 2.5 rounds. It's it seems about right. Tim Means is many, many times got tired and gets clipped, but Max Griffin is a bit of a decision machine. So it's I don't know. I'm not seeing an edge on that fight. Moving on down. A fight that I actually have a little bit of Skrilla on. We've got Waldo Cortes-Acosta taking on Jared Vanderaa, minus 200. Waldo Cortes-Acosta. Jared Vanderaa can be had for plus 170. Ugly, ugly heavyweight fight. And when it really comes down to it, it's watching Acosta on Contender Series take on Danilo Suzart. It was not, not a. It was I don't know where they found this Suzart guy. I know his record was half decent or whatever, but it's one, the guy did not look like a heavyweight whatsoever. Two, Suzart was able to kind of hold him up against the cage a little bit, make it a little bit greasy, make it a little bit dirty. Waldo's striking is wild and crazy. Doesn't look super, super technical. He's only 31, and he's a heavyweight. So it's he's got 9 years or so. It's you can fight until you're 40 when you're a heavyweight. So it's he's got time to improve and all of that type of stuff. But I don't know. Minus 200 making your UFC debut. Jared Vanderaa is on a 4-fight losing streak. It has been very the problem with him is that we've talked about it before. It's the guy is just dumb. He just makes bad decisions on the regular in basically every single fight of his. I think the move here and what I've been trying to do is if you can find a 1.5 rounds and up to minus 150 to the over. I had a one book that had a plus 105. I'm looking to add a little bit more, but I see Jared Vanderaa kind of hopefully. If he just hangs out at range and gets into an absolute slugfest, it could be a little bit problematic. But over 1.5 rounds, I think is a pretty good spot in this fight. Waldo basically got there with against that Suzart guy who was way undersized. Now he's actually taking on a real heavyweight, a real bad heavyweight. But both these guys are not entirely impressive. I'll pick Waldo just because Jared Vanderaa, against Chase Sherman, he goes in there and it's just okay, you took down Alexei Oleinik and then got submitted against Alexei Oleinik. Why don't you go in there and try to take down Chase Sherman? Because Chase Sherman's not going to submit you. And he doesn't even try to wrestle that entire fight. It's I was considering, heavyweight underdog here, but Jared Vanderaa is not a guy that's getting my money in the UFC. By literally ever. Over 1.5 rounds seems to make sense. I'm going to pick Waldo in this spot, but no, I'm not betting this guy. He seems super, super green. At minus 200, it's kind of risky biz. I could see a lot of standing cage control in this fight, and that's why I like the over 1.5. Over 2.5 in a heavyweight fight, that's where it gets a little bit dicey. I'm not sure I would put my money into that market. But yeah, Waldo for me. What about you?
Yeah, I got to go Waldo as well. Greasy heavyweight fight. So, do you want a ton of exposure on it? No, but yeah, I actually don't mind this guy. I'll be 100% honest with you. I remember he was fighting Bellator 271. This would have been just last year, late last year, right about 1 year ago, actually. He's fighting Bellator against Moderice. Now, tape study to them. Waldo Cortes is 6-4 as a pro boxer, right? Heavyweight pro boxer from the Dominican Republic, 6'4", 78-inch reach, and actually fought a couple okay guys and fought on a couple okay cards. He fought in that like MGM bubble back when COVID was going on. Again, not a terrible boxer, but apparently he's got a little bit of wrestling in his back pocket. So he decides, you know what? I'm going to fall back on MMA. Now, Moderice is a bum, sure, but he's got PFL experience and he's got a lot of wrestling experience in particular. So it's like, okay, well, this one would be an interesting one. Cortes easily stuffs out everything, easily kicks the crap out of him. Moderice clung on to him against the cage the entire time, but his takedown defense looked pretty solid. His boxing looked okay. Doesn't have that big heavyweight power punching, but an educated jab, good footwork, decent enough pace. Beats Moderice. Then he gets this Derek Weaver, doesn't matter, smokes him. Then he fought for the LFA heavyweight title against that Thomas Pedersen. Now, Thomas Pedersen's undefeated and a good looking prospect, but same thing with Waldo Cortes. Like he's actually developing. Still only 31, as you mentioned, comes from that boxing base, but he's training in Arizona with all the top teams, getting in solid rounds. And I do think that he's a work in progress. So when he came on to the Contender Series, I was very confident that he would get the win. As you mentioned, Suzart's undersized, and Suzart, I guess, held him up against the cage a little bit, but that's what everybody does. They don't get him down clean, so they just press him up against the cage. He's a little bit accepting of the position, kills a little too much time off the clock, but eventually he breaks free, and when he breaks free, he generally puts hands on guys. Jared Vanderaa could come in with a good game plan that revolves around all volume and output, march forward, and lean against him up against the cage. You've seen some success points for Jared Vanderaa, as you mentioned.
Like he could win.
100%.
He could win this fight if he comes in like he did against Justin Tafa. But it's like, I mean, that performance against Alexei Oleinik was like, you never really come back from that. Like a bettor will never trust you again after you, like, what were you thinking? Why do you go into the only range where you can lose this fight against old man Alexei? And trust me, you felt it worse than me because I had old man Alexei. You had to do a shoey on this very program for taking Jared Vanderaa. Like, once you do that, and like, I don't know, if you saw like his interview on Contender Series, like this guy is not, he's not firing on all cylinders. He's not the smartest guy. I mean, he gets punched in the head for a living, so he doesn't have to be a smart guy. But like, there's levels, and Jared Vanderaa is on the lowest level of fighter intelligence. In the fight, you're gonna be scratching your head many, many times. Yeah, but the guy who showed up against Tafa, looks like this is a very winnable fight if he shows up and does exactly that game plan.
That's fair, but I mean, one, that was 2 years ago now, and since then he's taken a whole lot of damage and has made zero improvements. Yep. And also, Justin Tafa is very limited himself. But you look at that 4-fight losing streak, the Romanov one, whatever, he got crushed by Romanov. But Andrei Arlovski fight, there's a debate that maybe he won that one. He slightly edged him out, but he just fought Arlovski's game, just stood right in front of him and went punch for punch. Not a good plan. Waldo Cortes, he'll win that exact same fight. But all the same, it's just he fights to his opponent's level there. The Alexei Oleinik fight. Well, apparently Vanderaa is a BJJ black belt. You wouldn't know it because he falls right into old man Oleinik's hand, as you mentioned, gets submitted. So that's like strike number 2 for the guy. It's like, Jesus, man. Now, I say, you know what? How do you beat Chase Sherman? Well, the easiest path to victory would be to take the guy down, right? Vanderaa's a big boy, and he's a BJJ black belt. Like, why wouldn't he try that? But I learned my lesson at that point, so I took Chase Sherman. I won't lie, it was like relatively competitive. It was a hell of a fight, man. The first 2 rounds, they're just unloading on each other. But again, Chase Sherman's ahead on the punch count, and then the third round just cleanly knocks him out. Like a bunch of damage. Do you want to know how many takedowns he attempted in that fight? Flat zero. Not even one. So he'll fight you however you want to fight. He's got 0 ring IQ. And that's why we're talking about, could he win this fight with the proper game plan? Yeah, I actually think he's got the skills. Like if he went out there, came forward, took a shot, leaned on him lots, and went high volume, maybe just like the Tafa fight, as you already mentioned, that would be the move. Is he actually going to go out there and do that?
Who knows?
Probably not. Now, greasy heavyweights on a greasy card, so why not just take that underdog money and go for Jared Vanderaa? And it's possible, but 4-fight losing streak, the guy's definitely on his way out. And, he fought for the LFA title and got wrecked once upon a time. Waldo Cortes actually did it the right way. He's got the boxing, he won in Bellator, he won the LFA title, he won the Contender Series. What more could you want from him, right? 31 years old, that's young for heavyweight. I'm expecting a little more out of him here.
I watched the Waldo winning the LFA title, and it's just like that the Peterson, like was it Steve Peterson? Not that Thomas. Steve Peters, or Thomas Peterson. But yeah, when he took on him, it's like what that guy was having success with is exactly how Vanderaa can win this fight. It's just whether Vanderaa actually shows up and does, like, before he got knocked out, the first 2 rounds, it was like, that Peterson guy was holding him up against the cage. Like, there are holes in his game that can be exploited. Just whether Vanderaa does that or whether he just hangs out at range and just decides to slug with them. If he does that, he's probably going to get knocked out. But yeah, over 1.5 rounds is how I'm attacking this fight. Moving on down, we got Josh Fremd taking on Tresean Gore. -160 Josh Fremd, +140 for Gore. I mean, I kind of think that this is like, there's 2 ways to bet this fight. And watch, now it's going to go to decision. But it's like Fremd, I'm not entirely impressed by his wrestling. But against Fluffy Hernandez, he showed that he's got decent jiu-jitsu. Like, he had, especially in round 2, it's like he had Hernandez, Fluffy, who's obviously made massive improvements at this point. He had him, like, on his back, defending against, like, submission attempts and stuff like that. Like, he's got some decent jiu-jitsu. I don't love his wrestling and how he's going to get the fight to the mat. But if he does, I do see, like, one book out there with Fremd by submission, +900. Don't think that's a terrible look in this spot. On the other side, it's Gore, who obviously was coming off of The Ultimate Fighter. And, a lot of people thought that he was going to be impressive. And, losing to Brian Battle seems like he's going to hang around in this division for quite a bit of time. He's a skilled guy in all aspects of MMA. No real shame in that one. But that last time out was really, really ugly. Super, super painful loss against Cody Brundage, where Brundage basically comes right across immediately as the fight starts, takes him down. And then, when they're exchanging, like, there doesn't seem to be too much striking defense. And in fairness to him, is like he was 3-0 when he ended up on the reality TV show. And obviously, there's a reason why usually these types of guys, they go to LFA. They have to fight a few fights. They have to, work their way up to this level. I don't know. The one saving grace for him is I don't really see too much, like, power in his fists from Fremd, so I don't know if the chin's going to get checked. I think this is a tale of 2 fights. It's like either Gore lands a heater, knocks out Fremd. Fremd's been knocked out by, Gregory Rodriguez. G-Rod's obviously a stud. Don't get me wrong on that front. But, like, the price on that is, like, +265. It's like I would probably just rather go to the money line if I was going to go on that side. But I'm going to go with Fremd to get the nod here. Fremd by submission. I see it +900. We'll see where other places open over the course of the week. That may be one of my my dirty little sprinkles this week. I'm going to pick Josh Fremd. What about you?
Yeah, I got Josh Fremd as well. I like what I see out of him. Could he get caught? Sure, it's MMA, but I actually don't mind him at all. He's one of these guys that has never fought someone that had a losing record. Like all of his fights are actually quite significant. He wrestled a little bit back in the day, got that wrestling base. 6'4" at this weight class is big, man. 76.5-inch reach. Like, knows how to utilize it. Decent ring IQ. Maybe that durability is not as good as we want, but I feel like this guy's trending in the right direction and is not a bad talent overall. He shows wins over Travis Davis, Lamar Agosi, Antonio Jones, Bruno Oliveira, all good regional scene wins, setting you up. Unfortunately, runs into Gregory Rodriguez. Now, did Rodriguez knock him out? Yeah. And was it a big knockout? Yeah. He got absolutely torched. But listen, Gregory Rodriguez is super legit, has made it to the UFC, continues to make it in the UFC and do great things. So it's a solid enough. You need those setbacks to go back to that drawing board. And then he picks up a couple wins, one for LFA, one for James Krause's promotion, FAC, and then jumps into the UFC. Now, keep in mind, when he fought Fluffy Hernandez, he took the fight on like a week's notice. Anthony Hernandez was originally supposed to take on Dricus du Plessis, and in comes in Josh Fremd on a week's notice at dog money. And I remember it because I bet Josh Fremd at dog money. I said, listen, the regional show stuff looks good. His LFA run looks good. This kid's a work in progress. He's got all the tools that would make a good martial artist. And for Fluffy Hernandez, I thought a lot of the favorite status was he choked out Rodolfo Vieira in his last fight, right? So it was like, oh, well, Rodolfo gassed out, but Fremd's cardio looked solid. And normally it is solid. And I thought he maybe could have won that fight. The week's notice is what hurt him. He ended the second round well. In the third round, unfortunately, Hernandez all over him. He ended up getting taken down 8 times in that fight. But it's a huge, trepid pace. And now think about Anthony Hernandez. He won his career best fight against Rodolfo Vieira, then came into this one and looked awesome. That's when people start making the mini Cain Velasquez comparisons because it's just like he was all over him with the takedowns, relentless pressure, and of course taking him down 8 times. And then his very next fight against Marc-Andre Barrios completely dominates him and submits him. So Hernandez has gone in the right direction. And of those 3 guys, who gave him the best go? Fremd on a week's notice. Still young enough that I think he's making improvements. He would have, in theory, had a full camp here. They were initially scheduled to fight a few months ago. Fremd pulled out. Don't know why. So I hope he's healthy going into this one. But I feel like he's got the experience, he's got the pace, he's got the pressure. And with Tresean Gore, maybe one of these guys, and you mentioned it yourself, that maybe should have gone like the LFA route. Maybe should have won a few fights and gone in the contender series. Like when he showed up to the Ultimate Fighter, he had virtually no professional experience, right? Even as a professional, he only had about 4 fights, or as an amateur, 4 fights. As a pro, 3 or 4 fights. And people kept saying, oh, he's the best looking prospect in the house. How many times have you seen that on the Ultimate Fighter where one guy looks infinitely better than the rest of them, and then in reality, it's not quite that same level? So it was interesting when he got hurt and pulled out, they ended up running back that fight with Brian Battle. Oh, Brian Battle's the fake champion, and Tresean Gore would have been the real champion, but he was a deer in the headlights. He froze up. He threw nothing. He just allowed Brian Battle to move backwards and outpoint him the entire time. He had no wrestling in that spot. He had no volume in that spot. He had no ability to adapt round to round. He showed just how green he was. And then the Cody Brunridge fight. Brunridge is a wrestler, right? Gore, maybe he was trying to step on the pedal a little bit more. Maybe he had tried to make some adjustments from the previous fight where he didn't do nothing against Battle. And in doing so, gets absolutely clunked and knocked out in the first round by Brunridge. So now what do? Do you come in with that easy style of taking your time and get worked? Look at AJ Dobson from this past weekend. He's genuinely surprised when they read the scorecards. Like, how did I lose this fight? It's like, dog, Petrosian landed like twice as many strikes as you. What do you mean? How do you? Was it competitive? Sure. Sure, it's competitive, but you got to throw at some point. Just don't really see it quite as much out of him. So with Gore, it's just like he's in a no-win situation. You're learning on the job. Does he have the power to catch Fremd? Of course he does. But has he shown that power to you lately? No, not lately. And with Fremd, I would think in a full camp, minds his P's and Q's, works him over, tires him out, pulls ahead on this one, and gets the victory. But this could maybe want to be those greasy fights where you love Josh Fremd and you have a card here where the guy's 0-1. He's lost his debut in the UFC. Those are the picks that last weekend was just like a riches, so many high quality fighters, right? You feel good about it. Now the spots that you like are like middling heavyweights and guys that are 0-1 in the UFC. Like it's one of those cards. It's basically a Dana White's Contender Series full version fight night.
Oh yeah, if you want to feel good about betting on this card, don't bet on like literally anything outside of like the main event. Like you're gonna feel like we're going to get to it a little bit later down here. It's just like, I mean, there's so many guys. It's just like there's so many. Yeah, they got more holes than Swiss cheese in their game. So it's like you got to be prepared for the worst and hope for the best in tons of these spots. But yeah, it sounds like we both like Fremd. I put a little bit on the 9-1. We'll see if I can get a better than something better than the 9-1 as books open up. But I don't want to miss Fremd sub because I think if he does get him to the ground, there could be a massive disparity on the mat between these two guys. Moving on down, we got Dustin Jacoby taking on Khalil Rountree. -160 Jacoby, +140 Rountree. Outside of like the Griffin fights, like Jacoby's been pretty solid in the UFC, and his durability. His ability to take damage has been quite good. I mean, Griffin is the fight that I bring up because Griffin knocked him down twice. Somehow he still got gifted that decision, but he doesn't make the rules. He just goes in there, fights to the best of his ability, and whatever the judges decide or what they decide. Griffin probably won that fight, but like if he if he's able to survive in this fight, it's like, does Rountree really have a full 3 rounds of high impact action in him? We haven't really seen it. It's like this guy went out there against Marcin Prachnio and got outstruck over the course of 15 minutes. And that's kind of the fight that I kind of see happening here. It's just like all of that time that Jacoby did overseas doing like glory kickboxing, it's like it's going to come in handy against a one-dimensional power puncher like Khalil Rountree, I think. Could Khalil Rountree land a big one and knock him out? Of course, it's MMA. They're wearing 4-ounce gloves. These things happen, but I mean, that Prachnio fight kind of leads me to believe that like Jacoby at -160 doesn't seem like a bad bet. What's your take here?
Yeah, I'm super nervous on this one. Like, in terms of which underdog have we talked about so far that I would like the most, it's Khalil Rountree. Listen, if you're going to give him plus money with what he brings to the table in terms of sheer power and aggression, he's got a good chance. When you talk about, well, Dustin Jacoby, glory experience, more technical, correct. All that is correct. The same thing with Gohan Saki. Like, just because you're a good kickboxer, it doesn't mean you're playing punchy kicky, man. It doesn't matter if you're better than the other guy. He's still gonna punchy kicky you back. Wrestling, that's the way you want to bet your money, right? Get on top of the other guy, grind under the ground, take the easy way out. When you're striking, you're going to run into problems. Justin Jacoby's a fine striker, but as you mentioned with Max and Griffin, dropped twice in that fight, right? In subsequent fights, he's some spots like the Ian Kudalaba fight, he took a decent amount of damage. Sometimes he does the damage himself, but I guess John Allen and Darren Stewart, like it's not elite level guys. And Khalil Rountree is one of these guys that so hit and miss that when he's good, he's unbelievably good. When he's bad, he's pretty darn bad. But if you get plus money for him, it's a dice roll anyways. You're rolling the dice on you're going to get a good in shape version of Khalil Rountree. Now, keep in mind when he's at his best, as we talked about the Gohan Saki fight, unbelievable. The Eric Anders fight, damn near killed the guy that night. Didn't actually knock him out, but like collective damage over the course of 15 minutes. Holy shit. That's when he's at his best. Apparently, he deals with a whole bunch of personal issues. And when he deals with his personal issues, he shows up out of shape. He had retired. They linked him to a fight with Greg Hardy at heavyweight. He said it was all bullshit. He moved to Thailand. He found himself. And when he found himself, he showed up on the scales and looked absolutely shredded against Modestas Bukauskas. Not that that's impressive. Completely canned him in the first round and then blew his knee out with a crazy little sidekick in the second round. So people don't want to give him his credit there because they say it's a cheap technique. But physically, he looked really good. His cardio looked really good. His striking is pretty damn good as well. Now, last fight with Carl Roberson, much of the same. He's on record talking about how good he was feeling, how his life was together. He shows up on the scales. He's absolutely shredded. Dude's still only 32 years old, and he looked unbelievably good. If he shows up motivated, in good shape against Dustin Jacoby, what's Dustin Jacoby's primary path to victory? Standing and striking and picking away at you, right? Like Khalil Rountree's got the goods that I think he could just uncork a bomb over the top, land something, maybe put Jacoby over. I'd like to take the more polished kickboxer, Dustin Jacoby, especially if they're going to fight for 15 minutes. Sure, like you said, Khalil got way too much muscle to carry it over, but when he's in shape, he'll carry it over, man. So I got to see the weigh-ins. I got to try to do as much digging into his personal life to see how things have been going for him because, again, when he's at his best, I think he's live as an underdog. If he's at his worst, Jacoby, yeah, these are the fights that he thrives in, right? He likes fighting fellow kickboxers. He probably won't have to wrestle at all in this spot. He does have the superior kickboxing skill set, and he's got the superior cardio. So why shouldn't he win, right? Against Rountree. Wait until you see the guy. Like, he's not the easiest guy to bet against. So the coward in me says just take Jacoby and move on. But the other side of me that's like, listen, some of these dogs are going to come through. You've been picking favorites to this point. Which one of these dogs do you like the most? I'm going to say it's Rountree.
Fair. I'm not going to argue too much against you on that one. He could definitely land the big one. But, I mean, if it's just a kickboxing fight at range and Dustin Jacoby doesn't get knocked out, I mean, he should absolutely win on volume, if nothing else. Moving on down, we got Phil Hawes taking on Roman Dolidze, -170 Hawes, +145 for Roman Dolidze. This is another really dodgy one because, like, Hawes has looked much, much improved in his last few fights, but Roman Dolidze, when you get into, like, clinch positions, you have two times that he's done it now. It's like he lands, like, a absolute haymaker elbow from hell. And we know with Hawes, it's like, yeah, when he's not getting knocked out, he's been looking much improved. The cardio's definitely looking better. He's obviously got a decent wrestling pedigree. But it really only takes one from Roman Dolidze. Roman Dolidze, the volume is never really quite there for him. Doesn't throw too many strikes. If this fight goes 15 minutes, Phil Hawes probably wins that fight the vast majority of times. Will Roman catch him is the real question. What do you think, Code?
No, I'm going to lean towards no. Again, I think if you're talking theoretical underdogs, then always bet against Phil Hawes if you're getting plus money the other side. I've been pretty much doing that my entire betting career. If I can get good plus money against Phil Hawes, I love to fade him because he's been that fade guy for me personally. But in this spot, yeah, not even I could come to the conclusion. Roman Dolidze is what he is, but again, he's another fighter that at his best could clip him at his worst. He's gonna lay a stinker, man. I go back to that Trevin Giles fight where his wrestling's pretty abysmal, his volume is non-existent, his ring IQ is non-existent. He'll fall back on leg locks and give up the position for the sake of, well, I was trying to submit the guy. Like, dog, it's 2022. This is modern day MMA. Don't fall back on a leg lock. Leg lock's like last case desperation move, or you're trying to create a scramble, right? Don't give up top position. But he does. He does. He's low volume. He's low ring IQ. He's 34 years old. His wrestling's really not all that good. His BJJ is really not all that good. So I'm not high on him. So loses the Giles fight, looks terrible. His next fight against Lariano Staropoli. Staropoli is like an out of shape welterweight, fighting up a weight class against Dolidze, who used to fight at heavyweight on the regional scene. Debuted in the UFC at 205. Is supposed to be a monster middleweight. Again, if you watch back that fight, it's awful. He outstruck him 14-9 over 15 minutes. This is not how you win a fight. You're not going to get by. It's that Daukaus fight, dude. You just clipped him, just like you're saying. It's possible. It's possible. You shouldn't have beaten Daukaus, but he's got that big power. He's got that big power inside the clinch. Hawes, not exactly known for his durability, could get clipped with something, but I've been harping on Hawes for a long time, and even I got to admit, the guy's definitely made improvements to his game. I mean, his wrestling was always quite good. He's a former junior college national champion and then transferred to a D1 program, so solid enough wrestling. He's a freak athlete, very explosive, has absolutely insane power, but when he doesn't get you out of there right away, seems like he faltered. Of course, we cashed a big ticket on him by taking the Action Man, but he was kicking the shit out of Action Man for the vast majority of that first round, right? He did look like he was improving. Unfortunately, he got caught. In his last fight with Duran Win took more damage than most referees will let a man take. But again, you saw was his reliance on the short game, right? Short little elbows in the clinch, right? His cardio looked a lot better. As Duran Win was fatiguing, it appeared that Phil Hawes was, still kind of with it. Phil Hawes is wrestling good enough to stuff anything that Duran Win was shooting his way, which is a feather in his cap because Duran Win an excellent wrestler in his own right. So I feel like the cardio is starting to trend better direction. His wrestling's good enough to just stuff everything Dolidze is able to throw at him. And so this is going to be a striking battle. And Dolidze has not shown he can win a 15-minute striking battle. He's not shown that he can win a 10-minute striking battle. He's just maybe got a punch or two in his arsenal, an elbow or two in his arsenal, whereas Phil Hawes seems to be a little more well-rounded. So if Hawes is going to get caught in something, damn, it is what it is. But I honestly just feel like he's fighting way smarter these days. He's going to be faster. He's going to be able to stuff the takedowns, keep this fight standing, and just chip away at him or land something big. So the fact that I'm picking Phil Hawes, maybe you want to go the other way because I'll curse him. I don't pick Phil Hawes almost ever, unless it's one of those absolute layup type fights, which they sometimes give him, right? But in this spot, I just think it's a favorable matchup for him. Dolidze really hasn't impressed me all that much outside of one win over Kyle Daukaus.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dolidze is gonna land like just once. Like, I think he's gonna knock him out. I don't think he's very impressive. Don't get me wrong. I don't think that this is some sort of like title contender moving forward, but it's been a while since we've seen Hawes' chin issues really rear their ugly head. Roman, like when they're in those clinch positions, could cause them some problems. Roman by knockout is like plus 500 out there. Not sure if I'm gonna get there, but that's how I would attack this one.
If you were gonna bet him, I think so. Yeah. That's
like I don't
think
he's gonna submit him. Like most of the time when he's off of his back doing like submission attempts and stuff, like he doesn't look like he's like a wizard or anything down there. Yeah, inside the distance is like plus 130 or plus 333. Him by knockout plus 500. We'll see where like other places open up. If I'm gonna do it, it's gonna be small It'll be a small little sprinkle on something like that. But we'll see. We'll watch how the rest of the week plays out and all of that. Not a spot that I like absolutely love. Moving on down, we've got Marcos Rogerio de Lima minus 255. He's taking on Andrei the Pitbull Arlovski, who can be had for plus 215 right now, Cody, on the market. Judges, every judge out there loves Andrei Arlovski. I mean, that's like, you can't even argue. There's so many fights that are like, if it's a close decision, Andrei Arlovski always wins. And, we've talked about this guy since the beginning of us ever doing this podcast. He's obviously long in the tooth. There was a period of time where everyone thought that his career was absolutely over. Getting knocked down, knocked out by everybody. But it's like, when you actually look back on it, his last 20 fights, he's been knocked down 5 times. You want to know who those people were, Cody?
Best in the game.
Stipe Miocic, Alistair Overeem, and that was Ubereem. Like, he was on so many steroids at that point in his career that, like, that's just the way it was. That was Overeem, like, pre-USADA. Like, he was so jacked. Francis Ngannou knocked him out. Tai Tuivasa knocked him down, and Jairzinho Rosenstrike. It's like everybody who has the absolute death touch is who absolutely, laid him out, knocked him down, did that type of thing. Otherwise, he's in, like, relatively close, like, decisions. Obviously, Aspinall was able to submit him. But, like, outside of all of that, Arlovski is in tough fights. Can Marcos Rogerio de Lima, if he doesn't knock him out in round 1, Andrei's probably going to win rounds 2 and 3. Yeah, so if Rogerio de Lima does not get a finish here, does not absolutely spark Andrei Arlovski, who, yes, he is chinny against the best of the best. I mean, plus 215. I'm going to be betting on Andrei Arlovski this week, Cody. What's your take here?
Yeah, I will as well. I feel like I'm forcing an underdog play, but again, this is dog number 2 on the card that I'm zoning in on. Andrei Arlovski. These are the types of spots that he absolutely thrives in, and crazy that you're still getting dog money on him because he's basically about near even or dog money every time he fights. And as you can see by his 4-fight winning streak, the fact that he's won 6 of his last 7 fights, the dude finds a way to get it done. Now, in an alternate universe, he's losing a lot of these fights. For my money's worth, he definitely lost the Tanner Boser fight. He may have lost the Carlos Felipe fight. More so, I thought maybe he lost that Jared Vanderaa fight. Even his last time out against Jake Collier. Against Jake Collier. Yeah, much of the same stuff, man. Split decision victory in a fight that really could have gone the other way. It's that he keeps them close. He keeps them competitive. And, of course, he's everybody's favorite fighter, apparently, so they keep nodding him these close decisions. Against Rogerio de Lima, the thing about him is he typically doesn't go to decision. He either sparks you or you finish him. And in this case, Arlovski hasn't finished anybody in a really long time, so who's got the bigger chance of going out there and getting the finish? Probably Marcos Rogerio de Lima. The thing is that I just can't bet Marcos Rogerio de Lima. I know I'm betting Phil Hawes. It is what it is. But Rogerio de Lima especially, like, this is not my guy. He's not very good. He's got all types of examples. He's a former light heavyweight, and I didn't even think he was really that big of a light heavyweight. Like, it looked like he could make 185. I think he fought at 185 one time back on the regional scene. And then his entire run is just like him looking out of shape on the scales, struggling to make 205, fighting a gamut of just the worst guys, rotating wins and losses throughout. Like, he beats Igor Prokhrayas. Like, what? Loses to Krylov, is actually good. Beats Clint Hester, bump. Loses to Antigulov, bump. Beats Jeremy Kimball, bump. Loses to St. Preux, pretty good. Beats Adam Azorek, bump. Loses to Stefan Struve, bump. The Struve fight's super embarrassing because Struve landed 0 significant strikes and still choked him out in the second round, beat him. He kicks Struve's ass in the first round, drops him 10 seconds in, gets on top of him, spends 0 energy, and then in the second round, gassed. The second that Struve just fell on top of him, he quit on himself. He's a BJJ black belt, and yet the vast majority of his losses come by submission. It's a bad look, man. Ben Sassoli. These high-ranked guys? Maurice Green. Ben Rothwell's now a bare-knuckle boxer in his 40s. Like, he operates at a super low level, but he's dangerous. He's got heavy hands. Like, now that he's a butterball of a heavyweight, especially so, he's willing to throw down. And the guy's never had cardio, ever. And then to his credit, he'd gone to decision against Maurice Green, And then he went to decision in his last fight against Blagoy Ivanov. He landed shots in that Ivanov fight. He might have won that fight. Glad he didn't, because I had a lot riding on Ivanov, but he may have won that fight, and he landed shots on Ivanov that 100% put Arlovski down.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is Ivanov is there to get hit. He doesn't move his feet, and he stands right in front of you. His striking is super lackluster, and he relies on trying to get into these clenched positions. So I feel like he was there to get hit. Whereas Arlovski sticks and moves to the outside, touch, go, touch, go, touch, go, tire this guy out, cause him to freeze up, outwork him. If it was dog money, Lima, I might be willing to take a sniff at that. But it's not, man. He's like a sizable favorite over Andrei Arlovski, who, did I mention, his 6 wins in his last 7 fights, fighting a pretty similar style and greasing out these decisions. He's live. He's live if they're going to give you this kind of dog money. So dog number 2 on the card, I'm going to take Andrei Arlovski as well.
And it's like really easy. Like a lot of people will be like, I'm going to watch round 1 to make sure that like Andrei Arlovski doesn't get doesn't get sparked early. It's just like, that's really easy to say, but it's like, if he eats a big shot and doesn't die, you're not going to be very, very fired up to like hammer a whole bunch of money at that ticket. You know what I mean? Like, if he gets wobbled, you're going to be scared. You're not going to end up betting it. It's like, we know the risks at play here. It's like, Rogerio de Lima does hit hard. Andrei Arlovski has been knocked out historically a whole bunch, but I mean, if Andrei can just get to the end of round 1, and it's like, I think he takes over this fight. And yeah, I'm shocked by like how wide the line is, to be perfectly honest. Andrei is on a 4-fight winning streak?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. 4-fight winning streaks. Like, a lot of these decisions he's getting gifted, but that you get that as well, is that like judges absolutely love Andrei Arlovski. For whatever reason, he just gets all of these close decisions. So if you can't beat him, join him.
These guys would have been training partners as well. They're both American Top Team guys, right? So like, I'm sure they're familiar with each other in one regard or the next. And Andrei would know what everybody else knows. Like, dude's got killer power, and he's just like not an athlete. You know, he's a guy that rolled off the stool and might knock you out, but listen, the theory of live betting Andrei is good too. If he gets knocked out in the first round, glad I avoid that one.
Mm-hmm.
If he doesn't get knocked out in the first round, but just loses the first round and shows, well, he's not that chinny, obviously, he didn't get knocked out that fast, obviously. Yeah, De Lima's a guy that it all starts to fall off.
It's going to be tough to fire at that spot, though. That's what I always say. It's like, I feel like when people are like, oh, it's, make sure he doesn't die first, I'm going to bet it live. It's kind of like a cop-out. It's like, are you really going to feel... If Andrei gets absolutely, he's stank-legged, like, running all over the cage, like, looks like he's about to die, they get to the end of round 1. Like, are you really going to fire on Andrei with any sort of conviction? Like, a lot of people won't. So it's like, when people say that, it's just like, well, you're probably just not going to end up betting this fight altogether, which is totally fine. But, yeah, I think it's Andrei, like, it's a clear dogger pass.
Yeah, well, it depends on the spot, man, because like a lot of the times it's not just, oh, my guy needs to show that he's got the chin. It's that if Rogerio de Lima has bad cardio, right? So him getting out of the first round, even if you're hurt, it's like, we just need to survive and we'll be good. There are some spots, right? Depends on who you're going for. Normally when you're betting a junkyard dog type fighter, a Trevor Peek or a Nate Landwehr, it's like, yeah, they may get shit kicked in the first round. I think that's usually how it goes for those guys. But the second and the third round, they're going to build off it. Arlovski's not that guy. He's not one of those guys, right? So maybe you're right. Maybe if he's stank-legged in the first round, it's not a good sign. But him surviving 5 minutes, I think, is a win in itself, because everything from de Lima is labored. Look at his record. It's pretty incredible, really. But he's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, nine UFC fights end in the first round, right? Incredible. It's just like, dude, the guy's a 1-round fighter. Well, what about the fights that went outside that 1 round? Career high significant strikes is 68 landed. His fight with Maurice Green,
he just
15 minutes. He landed 14. He didn't
laid on top of him for 15 minutes. Which, can he do that to Andrei? I don't think he can just dominate Andrei in the wrestling department like that. So throw that one out.
Yeah. Bro, Andrei Arlovski would be just fine stuffing takedowns and keeping his feet moving.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, if you want to go and wrestle him, good luck, because you don't got much of a gas tank. Those other guys got taken down and lied on their back. That was it. If he doesn't get him down, he's going to exhaust himself. And if he exhausts himself, Andre is just going to pick him away from the outside. And if it's close, dude, everybody's seen, Soldier of Fortune. Everybody knows Andrei Arlovski. Everybody's down with this guy. Pro debut 1997. Fought all the best guys out there. They like the guy. He's a likable character. You know what I mean? He's a funny guy. They're familiar with him. They give him these decisions, and the fans love him. So if you're going to get dog money on Andrei Arlovski, it's like at this point, you should learn your lesson. He's live for those underdog spots. As a favorite, maybe still not all that trustworthy. Should he have lost some of these fights? Sure. But the fact is, he didn't lose those fights. He's cashing tickets. Got to ride with it.
Yep. All right, we got Junyong Park taking on Joseph Holmes, minus 220 Park, plus 180 for Holmes. So you got here, buddy.
Yeah, there's two fights on the card that I didn't overly really care for too much for. Like I haven't dived as deep into it as I would like. This would be one of them, I would say. Junyong Park. It seems like again that he's talented enough, whole Iron Turtle thing, but he's based a lot on that durability, right? His chin's way up in the air. He's there to get hit, but he can take a shot and he can continue to move forward. He's got a couple tricks up his sleeve. But seeing Gregory Rodriguez, he had him hurt, man. Junyong Park's got him hurt. He's got him backing up. He's beating him to the punch, and he just steps in just recklessly and gets decimated, just decimated by him. Bad ring IQ, but overall, just like a mistake in a fight that he was otherwise winning. And had he beaten Gregory Rodriguez, this would look like a very solid win streak, right? Last time out against Eric Anders, again, he landed a whole lot. Takedown defense didn't look great. But with Joseph Holmes, I just feel like he's another one of these guys that could have benefited from more time on the regional scene instead of getting thrusted into the UFC. One on the Contender Series against Shante Barnes. And if you watch that fight back, he don't look good against Shante Barnes. Kind of a red flag. Comes into the UFC relatively short notice against Jamie Pickett and loses to Jamie Pickett. Gets controlled in the clinch the entire time. These are red flags for you. And then what do they do for the poor guy? Well, they give him the Alan Amedovski treatment because, everybody can at least beat Alan Amedovski. So they give him that. He subs him in the first round. I think his top game is actually pretty decent. If he was to end up on top of Junyong Park, I think he's live. But his ability to get controlled in the clinch that easily against Jamie Pickett's got me worried. His striking overall, even though he comes from more of a kickboxing base, doesn't seem like he can really tie in 15 full minutes. And so I just think Junyong Park will eventually break on through, break the guy down, take his best shots, wear on him, tire him out, maybe even get a few takedowns of his own. But if he ends up on his back, we do got a problem. If he just stays the course, marches forward, chin checks out, I think Junyong Park probably gets the decision victory. But yeah, again, something that I'm going to have to look at a lot more before I put any hard-earned money on it.
Yeah, I'm leaning with you. I've got Junyong Park winning this fight. I'd be a little bit like Holmes is a half decent grappler if it does get to the mat. So it's like
he is, yeah.
And Holmes does have like a significant reach advantage on the feet. But it's like I don't really rate his stand-up game whatsoever at this point. He's obviously still young in the game. Maybe we'll see massive improvements as time goes on. But from what I've seen from him, in the stand-up realm, outside of like, absolutely killing Amedovski, it's like I haven't been too impressed with what he's capable of on the feet. I like Park as well, but, the market tells me it's minus 220 for Park to win this fight, which seems about right. Like, he's giving up a whole bunch of, size, reach, all of that type of stuff. If he grapples, maybe he could end up in some tough situations down there. It's enough for me to stay away from Park from a betting perspective, but I'll pick him to win. We got Chase Hooper taking on Steve Garcia. Chase is a minus 300 favorite. Steve is plus 250. Steve got sent over to Singapore, Cody. I think you had a shoey bet. You lost a shoey bet to me on that one as well.
Singapore Steve.
Why did they send Steve to Singapore, Cody? To get knocked out by Mahashate. Why do you think they have Steve taking on Chase Hooper, who is young, developing? It's to get submitted by Chase Hooper. But, I mean, the price of this for somebody who's as limited as Chase is in his game right now, it's a little bit of risky business. That being said, the Felipe Colares fight, Chase showed that he's making some major improvements every single fight, every single time that he goes out there. He is, 23 years old? he's still a baby in this game. Yeah, everything's kind of coming along for Hooper. I think they've matched him up well here. Minus 300. The line keeps climbing as the week goes along. It really comes down to, if this just stays at range, I would be a little bit worried laying the minus 300 on Chase Hooper. That's what it really comes down to for me. I'm going to pick him for the purposes of this show, but I don't know how I really get there from a betting perspective. The wrestling hasn't looked amazing for him so far in his career. The stand-up is definitely a work in progress. There's no doubting that the kid is super, super talented when he's able to grapple. Chase Hooper's the pick. Don't know if I'm going to bet it. What about you?
Yeah, honestly, I really like Chase Hooper. I like Chase Hooper at minus 300. Chase Hooper minus 300. I'll still bet it. But Chase Hooper by knockout plus 475. That's what I'm in on this one. I think Chase Hooper's got a good chance to go out there to take this fight to the ground, dominate the exact same way, and just pile up these significant strikes from top control. So yeah, we all like to shit on him, of course, man. He's got like that little McLovin vibe going. He looks like Michael Cera, you obviously because you're Canadian. Got that geeky vibe. He's 17. Ben Askren's son vignettes that they do on Fight Pass. It's a joke, man. It's all a joke. And the results, yeah, not so great. But still, man, to be like 18 years old picking up wins over Luis Gomez, pretty impressive. Beats Daniel Tamor in his debut, the lesser of the Tamor brothers, but all the same dominates him, and then runs into Bruce Leroy. Well, Bruce Leroy is actually a pretty good fighter, right? A guy that's been a career fringe top 15, but has fought all the best guys in the sport and continues to give everybody a hard test each and every time out. High level BJJ black belt, better wrestler, better striker, better than Chase Hooper absolutely everywhere. But Chase Hooper needed that fight the same way a lot of fighters that are good prospects need to lose and need to have that moment of like, do you want this? Are you actually a fighter? He got hit 103 significant times by Bruce Leroy that night. He got dropped and hurt, stung by Bruce Leroy that night, but he never quit on himself. That was good. He had a fighter's heart. He just didn't have the wrestling to really put together his BJJ. His striking's not very good. His wrestling's not very good. So the only good thing about him is his BJJ. How are you going to use it? But you see that he's starting to tie it all together. Now, the next fight against Peter Barrett, the striking's still abysmal, terrible. Wrestling's still pretty bad. Gets that knee bar in the third round, but like by chance of God, I mean, he was down 2 rounds. Not a great performance, but still a young kid, developing experience. Shows again that he's a fighter. He got shit kicked for the first 2 rounds. He looked awful, but he's still stuck with it, find a way to win. The Steven Peterson fight, I bet heavy against him. I think a lot of people bet heavy against him. But man, I'll tell you what, in that Steven Peterson fight, that was the best he had looked. He took Peterson down 3 times. He was in a lot of those scrambles. He lost the fight. But again, you can see work in progress. And then the Felipe Corrales fight, I thought that was the best he's ever looked. His wrestling looked a lot better. His striking looked a lot better. His absolute dominance on top. He's big for the weight class. Mm-hmm. People don't want to look at this nerdy kid and say he's strong, but he's filling out his frame, and he is strong, and he's got nasty leverage. And Felipe Corrales, he's one of these guys that's a junkyard dog. He junkyard Luke Sanders. He'll keep coming after you. It's like he got dominated. This kid's got a hell of a beard on him. You look at all of his fights, he can take damage. That's one thing about Felipe Corrales. He got completely canned repeatedly by Chase Hooper, who I thought was looking a lot more physically mature and a lot better. Now, the UFC knows this is a better performance, but let's continue to grind him along that slow path. 23 years old, marketable. Let's do it the right way. And so I think they give him a perfect guy here. And Steve Garcia, who, let's be perfectly honest, Steve Garcia's fights, well, I mean, he didn't really show much against Luis Pena, right? Lost the Pena fight, didn't really land a whole lot. It just wasn't a very good fight altogether. It's the next 2 I want to talk about. Charlie Ontiveros completely rocks him. He is rocked. And then he falls on top of Charlie Ontiveros, who, doesn't have a ground game, and he pounds him out. His chin looked awful in that fight, and he falls on top to Charlie Ontiveros. That Maha shot fight, the fight starts, he walks face first into a shot that drops him. He does get back up. Believe me, my Shui bet was back live for a second, and then quite literally walked right. It was like Marcin Prachnio, Sam Alvey. He just hands down walks right into the second shot, and when it puts him right down. His chin's not good.
In your apple pie.
Oh my God. Well, yeah, I had Garcia on like the 4th, 5th line or something stupid, but I did have a Shui bet, so I won't forget that. His chin is no good. His striking defense is no good. I think his wrestling's like okay, but the way he strikes, everything's off balance. He doesn't throw a jab, he doesn't set up leg kicks. He marches forward and wings at you. And so what's going to happen is even if Chase Hooper couldn't take him down with a single leg takedown or a low ankle pick or couldn't, he's going to be able to literally fall on top of him. The guy just creates so many opportunities to trip him up, to fall over, to get on top by throwing himself off balance. And I think Chase Hooper is going to get on top of him. He's going to backpack him with a body triangle because he's got those long legs. And he's just going to absolutely mash him with ground and pound until the ref says, you got to improve your position, keep working, defend yourself. And Garcia's just got nowhere to go. And plus 475, you just saw it happen against Corrales. And meanwhile, Felipe Corrales could take a hell of a shot, bro. Again, this is a guy that's known to take damage. Not Steve Garcia gets rocked by pretty much everybody going. Takedown defense lackluster, striking lackluster, power lackluster. There's really no X factor to his game. He's not going to just fluke catch Chase Hooper and knock him out. He's not just going to fluke submit Chase Hooper. So he's going to have to be there for all 15 minutes. And I just feel like the kid's going to eventually end up on top of him. When he does, he's going to make him pay. So minus 300 for Chase Hooper on the money line. Like, yeah, does anybody want a part of that? Probably not. Would you top ticket him this week? It's like, man, we're going to top ticket Chase Hooper this week. It's one of those kind of cards, Paul Shaughnessy. In terms of that knockout prop, it looks pretty good to me, man.
Chase by knockout?
Inside the distance, not terrible either, but like I just got a gut feeling that instead of trying to grab that rear naked choke, he's just going to continuously smash on.
It's like plus 120, plus 100 out there. If you pick, the submission is plus 250. Hooper by knockout plus 475 right now. I mean, I always hate those types of situations because you're expecting like a ground and pound. So it's like he either lands a whole bunch of shots and then the guy flips over, gives him his back, and then he sinks in a rear naked choke, and you're like, oh man, why didn't you just pound on his brain? Like, why didn't you just finish it due to strikes? Or the exact opposite happens where like he's down there, he's fishing for submissions, but Steve gets out of the submission and then he pounds them away. It's like I always find those spots, like I usually just go with the inside the distance because I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, Steve got dropped twice by Mahashate. We need Mahashate to come back because,
Chase Hooper versus Mahashate.
They're not going to do that. They don't want Chase to take that heat. Like, don't kid yourself on that. Mahashate is the truth. I actually don't know that. I just knew that he was going to beat Steve in Singapore. All right, we got Carlos Mota taking on Cody Durden. Mota coming in on short notice this week, like very, very short notice, replacing Cledson Rodriguez. But, he's the LFA champion. Comes in here, he's a minus 160 favorite in his UFC debut. I haven't watched as much tape as I would like. I watched his last two fights, and this guy looks pretty solid on the feet. Like, good footwork, has some pop in his hands for 125 pounds. The real question I kind of have about him is, like, how is his grappling? Because I imagine Durden's going to come in here and try to take him down. But I mean, he seems like a rightful favorite. Like I was like, oh, all right. They're gonna line this with like, a guy with UFC experience at plus 140. It's like I was looking for reasons to bet Durden, and I came away after watching Mota tape that it's like, all right, this guy actually looks like he's probably gonna belong in this division for a while. This could be the type of fight that like hands Cody Durden his walking papers. I like what I see from him. I just don't know enough about his grappling game, to be perfectly honest, because it's been quick finishes that I've seen from Carlos Mota. But Mota by knockout is probably how I would attack this fight. Interested to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, again, it's a short notice throw on a fight. It was supposed to be Klitzen originally taking on Cody Durden. So, yeah, listen, I like Mota. The big question mark for me is like, what kind of shape is he in? Because at his best, like he's a guy that fought for the LFA title, went into the fifth round, but got TKO'd in the fifth round by Charles Johnson. Like, hey man, championship rounds, and to that point, he was undefeated, right? So I don't think he's got any glaring big hole in his game. I think his striking is pretty good. I think his wrestling is not terrible. His grappling pretty good. The cardio, again, that's just a question mark of mine. But with Cody Durden, he doesn't really have that pace as well. Generally, his fights end in the first round. And when they don't end in the first round, he's kind of been known to fatigue a little bit. Of course, the fight with Jamie Flick did end in the first round, but you could already see the wheels in motion. He was trying to fatigue off those couple of takedowns. And then against a Richie Lang, he wins the first round, he wins the second round. They're close rounds, but I would say you probably give a slight edge towards Cody Durden, and then just flat gasses out in that third round again. So his last two fights back to these quick first round finishes, but against Carlos Mota, I feel like he's going to have to go out there and really grind on him. If you're going to use that superior wrestling, then you're going to have to do it for 15 full minutes. And if that's the case, then Durden's going to tire out. Once he tires out, yeah, he's very hittable. He doesn't move his head all that much. A lot of his movements are very explosive, right? I feel like it's still green in his own way. He's got experience. He just doesn't really have that high level caliber experience. He's going to start getting more comfortable and fall into his own, but I just don't think that this is it. Now, Mota being on short notice kind of gives me cause for concern. I had briefly considered maybe just taking a flyer on Cody Durden because you're just chasing an underdog, but I don't like just chasing an underdog for no good reason. I actually got to feel like I think they're going to win, and yeah, I'm not feeling it for Cody Durden. But I will admit this to Cody Durden. Outside of his Jimmy Flick fight, which I had Flick, I've been very bad on this guy. I thought Chris Gutierrez would kill him. He should have won that fight. I don't know why referee or judges would give a 10-8 first round on the basis of zero damage, but back take. Whatever. He had his back the entire round. I get it, but just not a 10-8 round in my opinion. But I had that one wrong. I thought he would lose. It was a draw. The Richie Lang fight, I bet against him. He won. The Makayev fight, I actually bet on him, and Makayev smoked him. The JP Buys fight, I took JP Buys and Durden won. Like, I just have a bad track record betting Cody Durden fights. When I think he's going to gas out and not show up, he shows you something. When I think that this guy's actually got a little bit of talent, decent wrestling, hard nosed, grinding type guy, blue collar, the kind of fight style you can get behind and like, he doesn't put it all together, right? This is another one of these spots. I'm tempted to pull the trigger, and then I just feel like he takes down Mota a couple times in the first round, tires himself out, and gets caught with the counter left, or doesn't take Mota down in the first round, has a little bit of success with his hands, gets going too much, gets caught with the counter left. But again, Mota being on short notice, anything could happen.
Mota's listed as a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I mean,
he is,
everyone's a black belt in jiu-jitsu, of course, at this level, but
not even that.
That's
just a lot of guys from Brazil or Brazilian jiu-jitsu black belts on the basis of I'm not gonna name him by name because it'd be disrespectful, but like a guy that I trained for, two guys that I trained with for the longest time, it's like when I met them, they were purple belts and they never got any better than purple belt, but they were older guys, right? They were like 40 when they were purple belts, and all of a sudden they're 50 and they're brown belts, and it's just like, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden it's like they're both black belts. It's like, man, I don't understand. Like, how do you get a black belt? Do you got to like beat a black belt? Do you got to like show off some like crazy demonstration of moves? But a lot of the time it's a respect thing. They'll just give it to you. It's like, oh, Paul, you've been doing jiu-jitsu for 20 years. You started when you were 10 years old and now you're 30. Here's your black belt on the basis of you just been doing it for 20 years. Like, what's the real criteria for earning a BJJ black belt, right? So for me, I always thought like if you're a white belt, you should compete at a white belt tournament. And if you won that white belt tournament, you beat a couple other white belts, you get a blue belt. And then if you went to a blue belt tournament, you win a bunch of blue belts, maybe a purple belt. That's how I always considered it. So if you're like a badass brown belt, you sub other brown belts, you're a black belt. And if you're a black belt and you sub other black belts, you're a world class black belt. But yeah, no, I think nowadays you see it all the time where it's like Kevin Holland's a BJJ black belt, Jared Vanderaa is a BJJ black belt, and those guys are American, right? It would have taken them 10 plus years to get it done. Over in Brazil, you start at such a young age that you get it at such a young age. Now, what we've seen from Mota is pretty good. Like, honestly, he's fought a decent level of regional show guy, and he's shown a whole lot of skills, but it almost reminds you of a lot of these Brazilian fighters that come in, make their debut on relatively short notice. Even Jim Miller, remember Jim Miller fought the other Mota. It's like they've got skill on paper. Does it going to translate under the bright lights? Like, one thing about Durden is he's got that experience. He's flown over to different places. He's gone on the plane. He's made the weight cuts. Actually, there's another thing about we didn't really bring up. Durden struggles to make weight. Like, you probably want to sit and watch weigh-ins for this one before you make a final say one way or another. Yeah, like he's a big dude, and I know he struggles to make the weight because he's a big dude, and he's a professional, and he wrestled in college and he wrestled in high school. Like, he knows how to get it done. But the bigger you get, the more mature you get. Family man, getting older. These weight cuts are just really hard on the body. And the flip side of that is Mota's taking the fight on short notice, so you probably just want to watch weigh-ins on either side, but not enough for me just to pick the random underdog shot. So I'll roll with another favorite here.
In fairness to Carlos Mota, after that diatribe, he's only 27 years old and he's a black belt. So, in BJJ, he's young. He's got a 2.5-inch reach advantage. I think his stand-up looks pretty solid. Like, I think he fits right into the division right now. If he has half decent skills on the ground, like, I think it's a very winnable fight. But yeah, it really does come down to, like, you're cutting down to 125. How hard is that cut usually for him? Was he getting ready? These are all things that we're really not going to necessarily know. Definitely watch the weigh-ins before laying anything significant. But I think this guy could definitely hang around this division, and I don't really rate Durden. I know I took him against Mikhaev, and then because he was a massive underdog, and I wasn't too impressed by what Mikhaev had done. And then we saw Mikhaev take on Malcolm Gordon, and like all of the things that I had seen, from Mikhaev rising up the ranks, is like it all kind of reared its ugly head in the Malcolm Gordon fight. Still comes away with the finish in round 3, but it's like he got a little bit exposed. Now, Mikhaev's what, like 21, 22 years old. He's a baby. There's so much time, so much room for improvement. But yeah, like he just cut right through Durden like he was nothing. If Mota has any sort of grappling ability, I think he absolutely dominates this fight. But yeah, watch the weigh-ins for sure. Finally, we've got Christian Rodriguez taking on Joshua Weems. This is a super late add to the card. Rodriguez is a minus 375 favorite. Joshua Weems can be had for plus 310. Weems was on the Contender Series and was absolutely obliterated against Fernie Garcia 2 minutes into round 1. Now he's coming off of a win over Mo Miller at Fury FC. Christian Rodriguez, though, like, I don't know, that JSP fight, Jonathan Pierce fight, he was able to hang out in the grappling range as a striker against, Jonathan Pierce, who, outside of like the Joe Lozon fight has been, a real problem for people to deal with. And like he gave JSP all of the issues that you could possibly ask for, like as a big underdog in that spot. Like I think this kid's pretty talented. Obviously, striking is the name of the game for him. But it's like he showed that like his grappling is like at least good enough to keep himself out of trouble in a lot of spots. I don't really rate Weems whatsoever. I think Christian Rodriguez is a rightful favorite. He's probably going to score a significant knockout probably early in this fight. No props have really opened up. We'll see how the week plays out over the course of it. But, yeah, Rodriguez I think is a decent little prospect on the rise here. What's your take?
Yeah, you see this all the time where it's like you lose your debut and your stock just goes way up. And that's the exact same thing with Christian Rodriguez. I top ticketed Jonathan Pierce. I love Jonathan Pierce. His cardio is solid, his wrestling solid. The guy just keeps in your face and grinds. And he's taking on Christian Rodriguez, who's coming in on short notice. He's gonna roll right through him. And what have we seen from him on the Contender Series? Dana didn't even give him the contract. He beat Junior Cortez, and he got taken down twice. So what's JSP going to do to him? Take him down, no problem. Christian looks good, man. Listen, he's 24 years old. He was 24 years old when he made his UFC debut. He was like 22, I think, when he was on the Contender Series. And I don't love these guys out of Rufus Sport in Milwaukee, but they are really sharp technical strikers, and that's exactly what he is. He's got a lot of good things going for him. Grappling is very opportunistic, creates great scrambles, can get back up to his feet. The JSP fight, listen, he gets taken down in the first round, but he's easily outstriking him, gets taken down. Second round, he's got him mad hurt at the end of the second round, almost out. And the third round, they got into a bit of a gunfight. Looked like JSP got a second win in that round. But Rodriguez is on short notice, 24 years old, fighting like a damn fine competitor within the division and look quite good. So no doubt people were going to be excited to see this kid come back. I think that the few months off, time to develop, he's going to end up being pretty all right. He was initially supposed to take on Garrett Armfield. Would have been a good fight. Armfield's a pretty decent prospect in his own right. I feel like he would have gotten a couple good hard rounds anyways. Armfield out, Joshua Weems in. And he's got a good enough looking 10-2 record, but just not super high on him. So I always say this, right? The guys that bare knuckle box, because it's like that's the end of the road. Your career is over, right? If you wanted to be a serious combat sports competitor, I think you box, right? You do MMA. Kickboxing is very prestigious, right? There's no money in it, but whatever. At least it's still got some prestige. Bare knuckle boxing is like an end of the road thing. It's dope. I love it. One of my favorite sports, but like nobody in the prime of their life is like, yeah, I'm gonna go bare knuckle box. That's why none of the top boxers do it. That's why none of the top MMA guys do it. The guys that do it are all 37, 38, 39, 40, right? They're always older. They're always a little more advanced. Their competitive career, something else ended, and now they're bare knuckle boxing. All their champions did something else prior, failed at doing something prior, and now they're doing this. So to see that Josh Weems is doing a bunch of bare knuckle boxing before he even got really seriously going in MMA, kind of a little bit of a red flag. He did a little pro boxing, he did some bare knuckle boxing, he did some bare knuckle MMA, and then he ended up on the Contender Series. I brought up all these same points and for why you would want no part of this guy. I got a nagging suspicion he's really not all that good. And then Fernie Garcia absolutely sparked him 2 minutes in. To his credit, though, he picked up a couple nice little victories. The Thiago Bea one in B2, little armbar, not as impressive as the next one, Mo Miller. Mo Miller, a beast, great wrestler, guy that's just tenacious and a good athlete. But Mo Miller don't know shit about grappling. Man. He can take you down. Like he's not quite ready to be a fighter just yet, and that's why he keeps getting caught by these guys that someday he will beat, no doubt. Just not right now. He's way too green. So I feel like Weems caught him in a guillotine choke, and then that win propels him to the short list of guys that they're willing to bring in on short notice to get beat up. That's what it fits the spot here. So how does he go out there and beat Christian Rodriguez? Probably trying to utilize his grappling. I don't think he's going to win a striking match, so he tries to utilize that grappling, but he doesn't have that same wrestling style as the Jonathan Pierce. So I don't think he's going to be able to continuously do it. And in terms of his chin, he doesn't got a chin like Jonathan Pierce, who debatable if Pierce's chin is really all that good to begin with. But in Weems' case, short notice, there to get hit. If he doesn't get the grappling going early and often, I feel like Rodriguez is just going to intercept him. Minus 350, of course, big price tag for a kid, sophomore outing, but that's the name of the game on this card. Like, we talked about the same thing with, I don't know, Waldo Cortez. It's his UFC debut, and he's taking a bunch of money as being like a favorite. Josh Fremd, you and I both like Josh Fremd. Josh Fremd's 0-1 in the UFC. And this kid, Christian Rodriguez, he's a minus 350 favorite, 0-1 in the UFC. Like, you have to taper off your expectations a little bit. But those big pay-per-views like last week where it looks too good to be true, where you get 8 in a row to start out, where you're rubbing your hands together, those ones typically someone shits in the apple pie. These greasy cards where you have no expectations, you know how it's been historically. Yeah, sometimes you do find that diamond in the rough, that little gem, and turn it into a profitable night. So you'll enjoy this fight from the entertainment perspective because there's going to be some greasy middling fights, and who doesn't love that? But if we can zone in on those key 4 or 5 plays that we really do like and make this one a profitable one, get back on track, that'll be way more enjoyable.
3 plays for me so far. Andrei Arlovski plus 215 on the money line. Fremd by submission plus 900, just a little sprinkle. We'll see. Maybe I'll add a little bit more if there's like crazy numbers that open up over the course of the week, but we'll see about that.
That's already a pretty crazy number, no?
Yeah, I mean, if he gets him to the ground, like he did show me in that fight against Fluffy Hernandez that like his grappling's solid. Like he was able to hang out with like Fluffy's a problem. It's like if Fluffy's able to get top position against you, like he causes massive problems. And like Fremd was able to hang out with him, and he's got a bunch of submissions on his record. I'm not sure what Gore can do. It's like his takedown defense has looked decent, but it's like if this fight gets to the mat, like Fremd could have a massive advantage there. So like plus 900 doesn't seem like a bad little sprinkle there. And then Waldo and Vanderaa over 1.5 for the fatties are gonna fatty. Just standing cage control, boys. Keep it tepid striking affair on the feet. I've got a little bit of plus 105. I added on this show a little bit at minus 130. At minus 150, I'm a little bit like, it's still dumb heavyweights throwing haymakers at each other. Like over minus 150, I'm probably out on the over 1.5. But it's something I'm going to slowly add as the week goes along. I mean, I would have added a full play on the 105, but it was like one of those books that's, a little bit they don't take very much action, but that's because they don't really change their odds as fastly or as quickly as they should. So got a little bit on it there, added a little bit more at minus 130. To make it a full play, I've still got to add a little bit more. But those are my 3 plays so far this week. At Paul Shag on Twitter, I will post my entire card later on Saturday. And without further ado, Cody, hit him with the PRP.
Yeah, so we're gonna go with Calvin Kattar, Max Griffin, Waldo Cortes-Acosta, Josh Fremd, Khalil Rountree, dog number one, Phil Hawes. Oh, God damn, why would I think Phil Hawes? Andrei Arlovski, Junyong Park, Chase Hooper, Carlos Mota, and Christian Rodriguez. So optically speaking, 11 fights, only really going with two underdogs. Doesn't look great. Last week, meanwhile, seemed like all the favorites were rolling for the most part. What was it? O'Malley was a dog. Bilal Muhammad was a dog. And Benil Dariush. So 3 dogs in 12 fights. This would be 2 dogs in 11 fights. We've outlined the other dogs that do have a chance. That being, in my opinion, I think Joseph Holmes, but maybe more so than him. Roman Dolidze definitely got a shot as an underdog. Paul thinks Jared Vanderaa potentially. That one's more just like a dog or pass. You just do it. Tim Means, again, could happen. It is a greasy card for sure. I think I'm just going to put Calvin Kattar right at the top because, listen, it's the main event. Hopefully I can get far enough to hedge it if I wanted to. But him being about even money is going to certainly help me out. Who do you match up with him? Well, I like Chase Hooper, but Chase Hooper is not necessarily someone you want to go all the way at the top. But if you go him and you go Christian Rodriguez, those are kind of like those 3 core guys for me. It gives you a plus 244, right? Who do you add on beyond that? Looks like Carlos Mota could be pretty good. Looks like, I don't know, I like Max Griffin, but even if you just put Waldo Cortes, yeah, that gives you plus 700, right? And that's just a 5-man parlay. So do you got to squeeze the other 6 fights that you don't really care about? Yeah, maybe not. Maybe you just pare it down this week. But again, whatever. It's a lotto ticket, right? A PRP, you're putting not a whole lot on. Just like it's going to have crazy big odds. And in this case, the PRP looks like it would pay based on the picks that we just did. It would pay 184 to 1. So let's do that. Let's just go and hit one of those.
How can it lose?
Yeah, is it going to be greasy? Sure. It's always greasy. We just need the grease to fall in our favor, which I'm optimistic is going to happen.
I mean, from like somebody sent me a tweet earlier today, and they had like 5. It was a 5-leg parlay, and they're like, "What do you think about this?" And I was still doing tape study and stuff, but it's like, I don't know. Like this card does not look very conducive to like, laying a whole bunch of favorites is very risky business. Like you gotta bat 1,000 to nail this one, to be perfectly honest. Like it is not easy sledding. A lot of these favorites, they have holes in their games. They could be totally exploited. It's tough business, but yeah.
I
responded to them. I'm like, I'm still breaking down. I'm still watching some tape right now, but yeah, it was kind of like, I was like, well, I don't know. It's always weird when people ask you that because it's just like, I don't want to respond and be like, well, I think 2 of those legs lose. Like, sorry, pal. Yeah, I mean, it's tough. This looks like an incredibly difficult card to hit like an 11-leg parlay. They're all hard to hit 11-leg parlays, but it's like I can see a whole bunch of these favorites going right down the tube. We'll find out.
Listen, dude, it's MMA. Anybody can definitely lose. And if you look at last week's card, the biggest lock I thought was Peter Yan, and he still got screwed in the end, right? So you just never know what's going to happen. But honestly, people sometimes be like, "Oh man, you got it wrong." Like, "Oh man, you got to be upset with that." "Oh man, you got it wrong again." Like this is how I look at it, right? So the people that I hang out with, you go to a bar, you're watching the fights. Someone says, "Hey man, I got $20 in my pocket that I want to bet some fights, and I got $20, right?" Would you be like, "Dude, I got the lock of all locks for you, dude. $20 pays you back $9.50. It's a lock." No. People I hang out with don't want to make $9.50 on a $20 bet because they're out at the fights, having a beer, having some chicken wings, and watching for an entertainment perspective. No. Instead, they're like, "Give me a 5-team heater, right? And let's see if we can turn that $20 into $100. Let's see if we can turn it into $120. Pay for the night. Have a good time. Have that thrill. Have that enjoyment." So again, there's a lot of people that they've got a pick for the whole card. They got 2 picks for the whole card. And listen, smart betting, right? Smart betting, and you're just selecting one spot, and maybe you can tune in the fights and watch your one fight and go on about your business. But just not what I do, man. I'm a fight fan. Watch all the fights. Obviously, if you're watching the show, and if you're watching the show at this point in the timestamps, You're an MMA fan, so you're going out there and you're trying to watch, right? You go and you buy a lottery ticket, they just generate some random ass numbers for you, and then you wait for the random numbers to come up. Is that thrilling? If it won, it would be. But it's like, is it thrilling just waiting for some random numbers to come up? No, at least you got a hand in this, right? You're making your selections. You know, two, three, four underdogs going to come. You're just trying to isolate which ones they are. And when you do finally hit your 100 to 1 ticket, when you do finally hit that 150 to 1 ticket, you're going to feel way better about it. And I was like, perhaps feeling like the slightest bit sorry for myself, maybe like a month ago. And then the NFL season started. Bro, these guys are getting torched. I don't bet football. But like, how could you? The dog wins like every other game, bro. It's embarrassing. There's no good teams in the NFL.
Football is so hard. Football is so hard to beat. Like,
unbelievable.
The markets are so sharp. Like,
it's gambling in a
UFC has become a lot sharper. And I mean, when you do your parlays, my drug of choice is long shot props. Similar type of strategies. You know, we want the big payday without, you know, having to invest all that much into some of it. But yeah, like when a lot of those types of plays, like the Fremd by submission plus 900, it's like that's my way of getting invested in these things. That's my $20. It's not $20. It's a lot more than that, but that's my $20 guy at the bar. Rather than doing a 5-leg parlay, it's like, you know, Fremd by submission at plus 900. That's my drug of choice. You're more of a parlay guy. I like the long props. But
see, for
I
me,
feel like that's where some of the value is these days. Is like a lot of the money lines, they're getting a lot sharper on these things. Times have definitely changed. There's obviously a lot more money flooding into this market. There's about 15 times as many touts and people running podcasts and a lot of people who do great work and everything like that. But it's made the market significantly sharper. It's like even at the beginning of the pandemic, there's been a massive explosion since then in this entire industry. So it's really, yeah. I mean, a lot of the guys that are really doing good work and like beating these numbers, they're betting these fights 2 months ago. We talk about it on a Wednesday, and these lines have moved significantly by the time we get to it. So, I mean, I absolutely beat Charles Oliveira on that line at plus 285. But frankly, the opening number on Islam at like minus 400 was actually probably right. So it's like I beat the line movement, but it doesn't really matter because, you know, Charles didn't look plus 150 in that spot. It's like their original number at like minus 400 was probably right on Islam. As a losing Charles bettor, I can admit that. But yeah, no, of course, it's there's fights every single week. People are betting these 2 months in advance at this point. So a lot of it's always been picked apart by the time it gets to us on Wednesday here, but we still enjoy doing it. We're going to keep firing, as always. Sounded like you have something to say, or can I get us out of here?
No, yeah. We're good to keep rolling. Go.
That is it for us this week. Hope you enjoyed the show. For producer Megan and Cody Saftic, I'm Paul Shaughnessy, saying goodbye and good luck.